You guys know I love talking about shit I'm pumped for. Way back in January, I made a video called Megalobox Looks Awesome, in which I basically went on for 5 minutes about a PV for the currently airing series Megalobox, and just how goddamn cool it looked. Well, fast forward months later, and I'd say most people share that sentiment, so how about we do it again? Sirius the Jaeger follows two factions of people, Jaegers and vampires, as they fight for supremacy in the imperial capital of 1930. Among these Jaeger is a werewolf by the name of Yuli, the sole survivor of his village, which just so happened to be slaughtered by the vampires. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand where his motivations lie, but what I've really dug about all the promotional material for this series, and just the concept of these two factions warring against each other, is the idea that there is no concrete bad guy. Okay, so murdering an entire village sounds pretty bad, but when you focus on this enemy faction to the same degree as the protagonist, you gain a broader perspective, and the black and white sides become a lot more gray. It actually reminds me of Fate Zero, where there were 7 people battling against each other, and while there were some teams that were clearly more malicious than others, you could completely understand the roots of every character's motivations, and for the most part, sympathize with every single one of them. If this series channels even an ounce of that, and we get the kinds of multifaceted characters that I'm hoping for, there is a ridiculous amount of potential here. And when you have 2 separate PVs focused on both sides of the story, that's the kind of thing it feels like they're going for. Of course, who cares about a cool premise? Who cares about lots of potential in the character work? Nobody gives a shit about that stuff. You just want to know if it'll look good, right? Well, fear not, as we have acclaimed studio P.A.WORKS to deliver us that greatness. If you've even seen cuts from shows like Eccentric Family or Sakura Quest, you'll know that P.A.WORKS have a slew of talented animators who are great at not just the over-the-top stuff, but also the more subtle details and character movements or facial expressions. They are an exceptionally talented studio, and this leads us into talking about the staff involved with Sirius the Jaeger in general. And to be completely honest, this staff is what gets me so excited for this project, and in turn led to the making of this video. Of note, and almost the complete star of the show, is director Masahiro Ando. That name might sound familiar to any animation fans out there, and that's because this dude is responsible for key animation in some of the most visually impressive films of all time. Ghost in the Shell, End of Evangelion, Jinro, Cowboy Bebop the movie. The dude's animation catalog goes on and on. And it's when I looked at his pedigree that I realized just how much of an eye for quality this man has. However, it's only when you look at his directorial works when things broaden even further. Series such as Kanon and Zetsuen no Tempest convey his masterful direction in regards to action scene composition, while others such as Hanasaku Iroha show his range, tackling a slice of life instead and all of the character nuances that come with that. However, what many will consider the crown jewel of his directorial roles is his work on Sword of the Stranger. I've realized that there's been a lot of hate aimed at Sword of the Stranger recently, but one thing you cannot deny is that the use of direction in the movie is absolutely spectacular, both in its quieter scenes and of course in the insane action sequences that the movie is known for. What you're supposed to get out of all this is that Ando is a man with a reputation. He can direct the more nuanced and character-driven stuff very well, but his heart lies with action direction and animation, which seems like the perfect fit for a series like this, especially when you look at how gorgeously animated and directed the PV is. Further, going hand in hand with that, if you look at action animation director Masahiro Sato, yet again this man has a pedigree teaming up on Ando projects such as Kanon and Sword of the Stranger, and animating ridiculously good action sequences, not even including some of his other work on Towa no Kwan and Noragami. However, when looking at a staff roster, the two most important roles for me are always the director and the writer. And unfortunately, when it comes to the writer for Sirius the Jaeger, Keigo Koyanagi, he has very little under his belt, and the stuff that he does have isn't particularly impressive. Of course, I wouldn't call this a shot in the dark, since I've seen a few writers for seemingly bad shows come out of nowhere with ridiculously good scripts and series compositions. But this is the one worrying aspect about the staff and production that could make or break the show. I will give this man the benefit of the doubt though, purely because he scripted 2 of the best episodes of Made in Abyss. And lastly, the final piece of the puzzle I want to focus on is the man behind the music, Masaru Yokoyama. You guys know how important a good soundtrack is to me in a series, and if this man's work is anything to go by, he is one of the better composers working today. Iron-Blooded Orphans and Kuzuno Honkai of course being the standouts of his work for me, which are some of the better OSTs I've heard in the past few years, and if you enjoy the music that's being played in this video, guess what? You're already a Yokoyama fan. Beyond those though, he has other notable works as well: Occultic 9, Your Lie in April, Fate Apocrypha, Demi-chan, etc, etc. All of these works just make me even more excited for this series, and just from the PV music alone, I know it will deliver. That about wraps it up though. Overall, I could not be more excited for this project. Just the pure fact that it's an action thriller original alone is enough to get me on board, but the fact that this staff is so acclaimed and you have P.A.WORKS helming it, I feel like we're in for something special. I would say this is probably my most anticipated series for next season, and I just really wanted to share that excitement with you guys. I hope I could bring this up to some of you who weren't aware of it beforehand, and even those of you who were, I'm hoping I could get you to feel the same level of enthusiasm that I do right now. Let me know what your preseason impressions of Sirius the Jaeger are in the comments below, and if you enjoyed anything I had to say here, I would really appreciate it if you liked the video, and make sure to subscribe for more of my content in the future, including videos like this just rambling about hype PVs and detailing great staff. And of course, as usual, have a great day.